Good morning. Welcome back to Passionate World Talk Radio. Educate, enlighten, entertain. And today, our special host is Betsy Wurzel, who's bringing her program Chatting with Betsy to Saturday mornings. So let's give a warm welcome to Betsy.
Hi, Lillian. Hi, everybody. Thank you for having me on this Saturday morning. And as you know, I'm Betsy Wurzel, host of Chatting with Betsy on Passion World Talk Radio. And I'm going to talk today, Lillian, about grieving. I lost my husband in January 1st, 2020. And from my own experience and the experience of other people that I hear, I think our society wants us to put our grief, in a box and put up on a shelf after the funeral. It doesn't work that way, people. Grief is messy. Grieving is messy. It's a messy process. You're all over emotionally. You're up, you're down. And from what I experienced and just talking to other women recently, is that people are uncomfortable with those who are grieving. They don't know what to say to them. They don't know how to, I guess they want to fix us. And what I want to tell the listeners is, people that are grieving, we don't want you to fix us. We just want you to listen without judgment and just hear us out. You don't have to fix us because it can't be fixed. Our loved ones are gone. That's not fixable. We just want to talk about our loved ones, and people are very uncomfortable with that. And what I had to say about that is, and I'm going to be very blunt because that's how I am, it's not my problem if someone's uncomfortable with my grief. If I show pictures of Matt and people are uncomfortable with that, that's their problem, not mine. And I had to learn that I'm grieving, I'm going to grieve, and I'm going to be showing pictures of Matt on the first of every month and honor him. And that's what I feel like doing. And if people don't like that, well, you know what? It's my own personal page, so too bad. I will continue to show pictures of Matt. And someone said to me about 2 weeks after Matt died, Betsy, you shouldn't be talking about Matt and raising awareness. You have to do something different because Matt is gone. And I said, well, number one, I know Matt is gone. I don't need a reminder. Number two is, if it wasn't for my husband, I never would have went in my car to start raising awareness on early onset Alzheimer's, which is what Matt had. And I will always talk about Matt and raising awareness because it's because of his journey that I went in my car and met Jeannie White, the station manager of Passion World Talk Radio. And that's how I went on Passion World Talk Radio. So I will always talk about Matt. I think, especially as a woman, Lillian, I haven't encountered this, but some women have. They're no longer welcome in what you call a social circle because they're afraid that that widow is going to be on the lookout for someone else's husband.
Yes, divorced women have that problem as well. Yeah. Who would? I had somebody take my husband away. What makes people think I'm going to do that to them? Really?
Really? It's like, don't flatter yourself. I don't want your husband.
Don't flatter yourself, girlie. That's your husband. He's just right for you. I had a friend who has a longtime lover, I guess is the best way to put it. And he said to her, I'm sorry that her husband died, and I will greet her and I'll be nice to her and I'll even hug her, but don't ask me to go to bed with her. And I told her to tell him, I don't want your charity. I'm perfectly fine of finding somebody who's right for me. Thank you, but no thanks. Chutzpah. That's all it is. Chutzpah.
That's right. And, when we talk about our loved one, we're sharing our memories. And, people are afraid, I think, to mention the person's name because we might get upset. Well, we know they're gone. We don't get upset about mentioning our loved one's name. Yes, we might tear up at a lovely memory because we're emotional. What's wrong with that? I think people are like, you know, there's a funeral, now go back to work, and that's it. I don't think our society knows how to treat grieving. We're not taught to grieve. We're not taught to handle loss. And I think that needs to change, Lillian. I think it needs to change big time.
Yeah, I think that the perception of somebody grieving, and everybody grieves differently.
Hmm.
And I found that not only are you no longer welcome in a lot of social situations, but people actually feel awkward around you and
Yeah.
they shush their children. And that really bothers me because when you've been married 30, 40, 50, 60 years, let me tell you something, people, it changes your life. For 30 years, you were a we within one, which means to me that when you marry somebody, most of the time is for love, not money, not things, but love. So you become a unit. And when that part of the unit dies or withers, or however you want to explain it, you feel incomplete without that other part by your side. And it's a difficult journey to transition from that unit into one. When I started dating 6 months after my husband died, the guys would ask me, well, when was the last time you dated? And I said, 21. I had my son at 22, single parent 15 years, married 30 years. This is the first time in my life that I'm all by myself. Guess what, folks? It is a big reality call. It is so different. But I have to say, on the other hand, men are still the same,
Hmm. Yeah.
which is really scary because it tells me that the majority of the men are still Peter Pans and they don't want to grow up.
Yeah. I haven't started dating yet. And, you know, I'm not ready. Too chicken to do online dating right now. But I've learned, Lillian, with going to seminars, that I don't need a man to validate who I am, or
No, no.
to
They're
validate my
supposed
work.
to enhance you and they're
Right.
supposed to be a compliment to whoever you are. And I have to tell you, I wasn't looking for this present gentleman who I'm involved with now. He pursued me on LinkedIn of all places, and I laid down the ground rules, and to my astonishment, he followed them.
Good for you, Lillian. I'm gonna clap. That's awesome.
Thank you very much. And his everything, and you're saying to yourself, well, who are you measuring him by? Well, I'm measuring him by my late husband because I have no other measuring stick. And my late husband, was a good man. And this gentleman is a good man. And that's how I'm measuring him by. Oh, by the way, he doesn't live in the United States. He's from France. He's a French man. But he
Oh,
appreciates who I am, what I'm doing, and the fact that I'm willing to give him a try. And you can't do any better than that. As they say, you have to kiss a lot of reptiles before you find the right one. And I also want to add, I had 11 other guys chase me through LinkedIn. And even
wow.
though LinkedIn is not supposed to be used for that, you would be surprised. So I knew at least he was a professional. He turns out to be an entrepreneur like I am. He's in the oil and gas business. My father was in the oil and gas business. I was raised in the oil and gas culture. When I was an administrative assistant, I worked in all the large oil and gas companies in Houston, Texas. No surprise. But so I was very comfortable and I understood his language, the oil and gas language. The French, I have to start teaching myself, which ought to be interesting because I took 10 years of French between junior high and high school and college. But I have to tell you this, my 7-year-old can recite the alphabet in French.
Wow, that's
I can
great.
always stick my grandson in. Say something, Leo.
It could translate. And, that's another subject, Lillian. I'm glad you brought up that you're dating. I haven't encountered this because I'm not dating, but there are some people who would say, oh, you're dating so soon? Or like, I was going to go to a dance, but I couldn't because the pandemic happened. I was going to go to a dance in February for widows and widowers just to check it out. And I figured worst comes to worst, I could do a story about it on Chatting with Betsy. But some people, they might think, oh, how can you go to a dance a month after your husband died? Or how can you do this? You know what, folks? First of all, it's none of your business what other people do. Second of all, if you haven't walked in someone's shoes, you shouldn't judge, and you shouldn't judge anyway. People who have had a spouse or partner with long-term illnesses like Alzheimer's. I mourned for 10 years. I was grieving all along for 10 years. And
yes, you have to understand.
Right.
Excuse me. But I wanted to add for people so they understand when your spouse has Alzheimer's, dementia, Parkinson's, and they've gotten to the point where they don't know you, they don't recognize you, despite what you think, and you don't certainly go to bed with them or have sex with them because they're incapable of doing that, you really are not cheating. I mean, that was one of the things I spoke with this gentleman about. And he said, I would understand if you had gone to bed with somebody because your spouse really wasn't your spouse any longer. He was a body and he was breathing, but he didn't know you and he didn't want to have anything to do with you, even if he did remember who you were. Because when you have those kind of diseases, your interest flags. My dad had Parkinson's. He and my mother slept in separate beds for like 20 years. They were married for 62 years. He met her when she was 12 years old and he was 12 years old. He got her parents' permission when he was 12 years old to marry her. Okay? So they had known each other for over 62 years. And by the time he died from Parkinson's, there was just no way of him to carry out his manly duties, if you want to put it that way.
Right.
It's just impossible.
I'm glad you brought that up, Lillian. I did a show probably last year about relationships outside of marriage. When you have someone who has that type, a long-term illness, and they no longer know who you are, or they're in a facility, or if they're not in a facility, but they still don't know who you are. Now, before everyone sends in hate mail, I'm not promoting being a homewrecker, okay? I'm not promoting that, not promoting infidelity. But I've seen in groups, and I belong to a lot of support groups, and people ask, what do you think about having an affair with someone, a relationship with someone? You know what I had to say about that? I couldn't do it. That's me, okay? And that's what it takes for you to feel alive and to get through this journey, then go for it. I mean, I'm not going to say I would never do that. I didn't, but if that's what it takes, people miss that human touch. We're human beings. We want to feel alive. And when someone comes along, makes you feel attractive again and makes you feel alive again, that's kind of hard to resist. But I see how people could have affairs, and I'm not judging them. I just, couldn't do it, but it happens.
If you go to some of the internet match rooms and read some of the comments from the older gentlemen, A lot of them will say, wife has Parkinson's, wife has Alzheimer, whatever. I love her very much,
Mhm.
but I need the company of a nice woman my age or a little bit younger where we can spend together and maybe some putting. And if anybody's interested, please contact me. Here's my whatever. And you really can't blame them. I mean, I didn't do it with Barry. To me, marriage is a covenant, a contract between a man and a woman before God. And
Mhm.
people, I'm an atheist. But to me, you're still being recognized by whatever power there is in the universe. And that when you make a covenant between you and somebody else, you need to honor it. Or just don't bother getting married then. You can't have it all. Something has to give. And with me, I was honoring my word of honor that I would love, cherish, forget the obey, and remain with them through sickness and illness. Well,
Mhm.
this is a major illness. I mean, he was fired from his company and he was out of work for 5 years. Did I leave him? No, we just tightened our belts for the next 5 years because that's what a covenant is all about. But
Yes.
everybody deals with pain
Mhm.
and loss differently.
Absolutely.
And you don't have to put on a performance for anybody. It's how you feel inside. And inside, my little inner voice said, Barry had Alzheimer's for 4 years. At the end, he declared he no longer wanted to live and he no longer loved you. I knew that was the illness, but there you go, folks. But I also knew that we had reached an impasse. But that did not mean I would run out and go to bed with the first stray that came along. I still could not do it because when I make a commitment to somebody, I'm very loyal to them. I know other people, men and women, who at a drop of a hat will drop their pants or skirt and crawl into bed and think nothing of it.
Yeah.
I'm not that way. But you have no right to be judge, jury, and executioner of my behavior. Because unless you're walking in Betsy's shoes or in my shoes, you have no rights at all. And you need to understand that and to learn it and to teach it to your kids that nobody has the right to be judge, jury, and executioner. That's not your role.
Absolutely. I agree, Lillian. I mean, I personally, I don't know how people had the energy to have an affair because I was working
Yes.
and doing everything, and I was so exhausted when I came home that I would think, how did people have the energy to even have an affair? Because I was just wiped out, and I was completely depleted after Matt died. You're talking, 10 years of caregiving. His last 2 weeks of life was brutal. And people just, they just expect you to go on as if nothing happened. And it's not true. I work at a preschool. And one of the parents said to me, "Oh, how you doing, Miss Betsy?" And I said, "Well, I'm exhausted." She said, "Why? I would think you'd be, relieved." And I said, "Well, I just spent 10 years caregiving, and the last week was rough. So I'm still, exhausted." And when I talk about the bad hospice experience I had, and everyone's experience is different, my mom is like, don't talk about it anymore. It's gone. Matt's gone. That's not the point that Matt is gone. The point is I share my experience to help someone else. And I put in a formal complaint so they never treat anybody like this again. Nobody should be treated like that ever. And I think they thought they were dealing with a meek little housewife. And little did they know that I'm a 5-foot spitfire when you get me mad. So, this is part of my life. This is part of my experience that I want to share. I worked in a preschool, but next door is a gymnastics owned by the same people. And a woman there lost her husband suddenly. So I think when you lose someone unexpectedly, you're dealing with that trauma, plus the grief and the shock. And she didn't have closure. So I feel really bad for those people, Lillian, that just didn't get a chance to say goodbye. I'm very fortunate. I was there holding Matt's hand, and that I did see him. I was there when he left this earth. And I'm thankful for that. And there's always something to be thankful for. And, people even will judge you. If you cry, they judge you. If you smile, they judge you. Like, why are you happy? Your husband died. Or how can you be happy? Your husband is sick. Well, when you work with children, you can't be going around with a sad face and crying all the time. There were times I did cry at work. I'll admit it. But you can't help it. You just can't help your emotions sometimes. But people shouldn't judge. I want to give advice. People, they say, well, I don't know what to say. You know what? If you don't know what to say to someone, why don't you just say, for an example, Betsy, or whoever the person is, I love you. I'm here for you. You want to talk? Go ahead and talk. I'm here for you. How about saying that? But don't tell people like Lillian, like me, and other people, get over it, because there's no getting over it. We get through it, but we don't get over it. And Lillian, I don't know really how some people deal like grief with the loss of a child. If you never experienced that, don't say to someone, I know how you feel, because you don't know how they feel. My hairstylist, and I went to, her son was killed by some freak accident, I think. When I saw her before the pandemic hit, I hugged her and I said, I am so sorry about your son. And I'm not going to tell you I know how you feel, because I don't. But I just want you to know that I'm very sorry about what happened. And she thanked me, and I told her about Matt. She goes, oh, I'm so sorry. And people had the nerve to tell her, Lillian, time heals all wounds.
That's because they've heard that expression, and time doesn't. I just tell people when they have a loss, I'm sorry, my shoulders are broad, you need to talk, I can handle it. Here's my number, call me. And that's all I say, because everybody's experience with loss is different. Mm-hmm. And not everybody handles it the same way, or handles it the way society thinks they should be handling it. For me, I told my son, I want professional wailers when I die, and I want them to wail all night. And that way it'll take away all the guilt everybody suffers about the loss of me. And you won't have to worry, because the professional wailers will do it for them.
They had that in Europe. That's an old European tradition. Mm-hmm.
Because people just don't know how to handle death. They don't talk about it. They try to forget it. They don't prepare for it. So when death happens, a lot of the grief they feel is guilt.
Yes, and I want to say, Lillian, that when people stifle their grief, oh, I have to, suck it up, I can't show any emotion, that's where you're going to have a problem. It's going to bite you in your rear end. Some people have nervous breakdowns. Some people just go into deep depression. I want to tell people, validate your feelings. Validate. Okay, I'm sad. And then, move it along. If you need help, I go for grief counseling. I'm not ashamed to say it. I go, I get a call every couple of weeks from my social worker at the senior center. I'm not ashamed to say I need grief counseling. I was supposed to go to a bereavement group with the hospice, but they canceled that to the pandemic and haven't heard from them. But go for counseling. Acknowledge your feelings. It's okay to feel sad. It's okay to cry. If you don't want to give away your possessions, your loved one's possessions, you don't have to. I had the experience. I couldn't believe how emotional I became. I gave away Matt's glasses and I cried. Like I really broke down sobbing. And I said to myself, you know what? If I'm like this with his glasses, there's no way I'm cleaning out his closet. I'm not ready. I'm not moving anywhere soon. I don't have to. You do things in your own time. There's no time frame. And that's the other thing people have to realize, Lillian. There's no time frame with giving away possessions. There's no time frame with grieving. It's an ongoing process. And
I agree with you on that. And sorry to break this up, but we will continue this next Saturday at 10 a.m. chatting with Betsy. And if you're grieving, please let us know ahead of time. So either contact Betsy. Please provide your Gmail.
Oh, mine. It's Sloan. That's my married name. SLOAN, Betsy31@gmail.com.
Or lsc@passionateworldtalkradio.com. Let us know that you're grieving. And then come and join us on Chatting with Betsy, the Grieving Edition. And come and grieve on Saturday mornings. So thank you very much for listening. And you're very much welcome, Betsy. And you others, you can see this on youtube.com/PWR Network _PW Talk Radio. On Facebook.com/Lillian Cauldwell 35. On https:// right-hand side menu, click on Chatting with Betsy, and voila, you should be able to see it. The audio will be heard on iTunes, iHeart, Spreaker, and all the other glorious directories that PWR is associated with. So once again, you've been on the air with Chatting with Betsy, the Grief Edition, Saturday mornings at 10 a.m. Eastern. Thank you very much for listening. And remember, have a terrific weekend.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.
Bye.